whakatau mate tangihia nei te au I te pō. Haere rā koutou. Tātou te hunga ora, ti he Maori ora.
Peki mai, kake mai, wakarongo ki te tangi a te hui a hui hui mai tātou, hiti hiti kōrero piua ki te awe. Hei mata ki taki, hei wakarongo rongo, mā te tini me te manoe.
Kia ora and welcome to Koha. Tonight, we report on two children riding their way to fame, a woman writing her way to fame, and we investigate whether advertising is giving Māoris a fair deal. The catwalk, the upfront world of selling to the public, just one of the many forms of advertising. Advertising affects everyone, whether it be an infant wearing double dry nappies, an adolescent treating pimples, or a family spreading jam on their morning toast.
Black models are the clothes pegs of fashion overseas, and especially in America and Europe, they're in big demand. Black modelling is big money. Here in New Zealand, it's rare to find large numbers of Māori models out on the catwalk. Most of the successful ones are working overseas. But the low percentage of Māori people in modelling doesn't just apply to the fashion world. In New Zealand's advertising industry, it applies right across the board.
You know, a jet plane landing, going through and down onto the runway. All right, so stand by. So
Koha did its own investigating, and the results speak for themselves. Of the 165 ads that Koha viewed on 3 prime-time weeknights, 578 people appeared. And of those 578, 14 were Māori. That means that just under 2.5% of the people in our television commercials are identifiably Māori. But in fact, if all commercials were counted, the figure would be about 1%.
Polynesians are 12% more or less of New Zealand's population. They should show up roughly in that kind of figures on television, if television really reflects life in this country. In commercials, they show up about 1%, maybe 2%. Something's wrong with it.
It's a sad fact that in the last, say, 20 years, Maoris have not been used for commercial purposes, as they should be.
How do you think that's affecting Māori people in general?
I think they probably feel very out of it, out of the consumer society, out of the lifestyle of New Zealand. I would think that if I was Maori, I would feel that it's not for me.
Where you're looking for someone to best represent a group of people, then commercially you're bound to minimise the risk. So the blunt fact of the matter is there are not enough Maori people in New Zealand to represent a viable marketing function.
I think there is a degree of racism in everything in this country. There's a degree of racism in advertising. It's inevitable unless people really start thinking about what they are about and what they are doing. And so it's easy to fall into the stereotype roles. I think we've got to be very careful not to do that in advertising because it reflects a mirror of society. And I think it just compounds the problems that already exist in New Zealand.
Use that collar again, more quick. Throw that head around.
Not only is there concern about the lack of Māori people in ads, but also how they are shown in them.
That's it, yeah, that's good.
No, I have not been satisfied with the way the Maori has been portrayed. I feel that we could do better. Okay, in some ads I feel that we are shown as a happy-go-lucky people, and so we are. We make no apologies for that. But also, I think I would like to see that we can be beautiful people as well and can be quite serious and quite competent in directing our own destiny.
I think there is some advertising showing Maori people in perhaps traditional stereotypes, which, if I was Maori, I would find demeaning. No question of that.
When you think of the most positive portrayal of a Maori in a television commercial, it's, of course, Kiri Te Kanawa, and she deserves all that acclaim because she is an international star. But it's, unfortunately for me, an ad from an American company made in England. It has no New Zealand connection other than the star. And I think that the New Zealand ads, which do use Maoris, certainly don't achieve anything like that. But my main problem with the New Zealand television commercials is that there are so few Polynesians in them at all.
But perhaps one of the only companies which has shown the diversity of people in this country with any consistency is Greg's. They've brought out a series of commercials featuring aspects of real New Zealand life. This was one of them.
There's a coffee we've all got to know, the finest taste to say hello. It's a cup of coffee, Fred's will favor. Hello, Greg's, hello, flavor. There's a welcome when you
It shows real people. They look like real human beings, the kind I see walking down the street. They are enjoying themselves in a New Zealand setting, and they are maintaining their own kind of cultural identity and yet sharing it with the others.
But what's the whole point of lobbying for Māori input in ads? Does it really matter whether Māoris appear in commercials?
For me, it matters a lot. I can think of three reasons. Probably the least important is that people like me, and I suspect there's a fair number of us out there, really like to see all that nice color technology that TVNZ has being used on something besides mountains and lakes. I like to see people of different colors on television. That's who I see in the street. That's who I see in my classroom. I want to see that on television too. The second one affects a much smaller group of people, but it's the Maori actors and actresses. Most New Zealand actors get their main supply of money, the staff of life, to get them through their days working on television commercials. Now, if you're brown, there is no law in this country that says you can't work on them. But there's a tradition that says you can't work on them. Law or no law, you don't get paid any better if you're not appearing in them, and they're simply not appearing. The third one is more important. It's the most important. I think that kids need to see their mothers and fathers and their older brothers and sisters, and eventually themselves, in positive roles. And one of the ways that we portray positive roles is in television, and television commercials are important in that. Kids watch commercials more carefully than they watch shows. That's why Sesame Street is a bunch of commercials all tacked together for half an hour. If you're a Pākehā kid growing up in New Zealand, you see a lot of people that look like your mommy and daddy and your brother and sister doing positive things. They're buying cars, they're banking their money, they're planting seeds. If you're a Maori kid, you don't see it. You almost never see it.
It is very important to show Māori ads to Māori children to help raise their self-esteem. And I think it's important, once we achieve this, raise their self-esteem, I don't think that you would have as many of the problems that we're having today.
Okay, that's good. More shoulder, bring the shoulder around, up, but you cannot work.
To be a model, you've got to want to be a model, so you can relate to the camera and things like that. To be a good model, you've got to have a certain type of quality, and I think with myself it's maybe the colour of my skin, my bone structure.
Our people have not had the courage to come forward and apply for positions within advertising. They felt perhaps that they weren't good enough, perhaps not beautiful enough to appear in front of a Kelvinator deep freeze. But today, that trend has changed.
Is that for time, Di?
Things may have changed, but progress to this point has been slow. For many, too slow.
That's nice.
There are capable Māori people around. Māori people able to present something which is relevant to both Māori and Pākehā.
Tēnā koe. What I'm going to say to you is very important. I'm going to tell you how to live a longer life. I'm going to tell you how to live a healthier life. And what's more, I'm going to tell you how to get more money, lots more money. What I'm going to say to you is fact, not opinion, not guesswork, but fact, based upon these papers of research from United States, Great Britain, New Zealand, Japan. Here is what you can do if you want to live longer, to stay healthier, to make more money. Stop smoking now.